and welcome to Write-Aerobics. We're going to be doing some fun exercises this morning to get those creative juices flowing and get ready to write. So, first warm up is our synonym sit-ups. So, we will be giving you some words, and you can give us some synonyms or other ways of talking about what we share. So, for example, talk. Speak, argue, yell, yep, yammer, rattle on and on, pitter patter, tit for tat, squawk, climb, traverse, claw, hike, yeah, strenuously step, read, could have looking at words, glancing at words, scanning, um, staring, things like that. Obviously, if you're looking at words, you're reading them. The beach. Shoreline, the coast, sand. All right, what about building? Structure, tower, skyscraper, obelisk. Um, all right, let's move on here. Exercise number 2, backstory buildings. We're going to take a look at somebody and we're going to invent a backstory for them just by, what we think their story might be on based on this image here. So let's take a look. Whoops. I feel like this is somebody negotiating a very interesting business merger. So he's like, so if we put your companies together, we'll make more than double the money. Or this is that smarmy businessman who's about to have something major happen to him. He'll have some sort of It's a Wonderful Life moment or something, or Christmas Carol moment. He's about to learn the errors of his greedy ways. Or he's some sort of guy that is trying to get them to try some sort of embezzlement scheme or something. I don't know. He looks pretty nice, but I don't know. I'm not so sure. The way he holds the pen in his fingers, it's a little suspicious. All right, let's move on here. He's describing how to bury a person. Oh, I like that. Wait, let's go back. Yeah, it does kind of look at that. He's like, so we can make it look like an accident if we just put them in the ground and then put some stuff on top of it, and then nobody's gonna find the body. Exercise number 3, perspective pumps. So we're going to look at a scene, and the idea is we're going to imagine this scene from different perspectives. So what are the different types of reactions you might have to it based on your mood, personality, etc. So here we go. Just love this video. So the first thing that comes to mind is a perspective could be this happy-go-lucky person that's like, I don't know how I'm going to get to where I'm going, but all I know is I'm free from my parents for the first time. Yeah! Then she's like out in the big bad world all by herself. Or if you want to take a less optimistic approach, it could be that somebody left her on the side of the road because she was annoying them, and now she's having to dash ahead while holding her hat. She seems like way too like hip and proper to be like running in the middle of the wilderness all by herself, you know? She's like, I feel like it's like it happened one night scenario. That's an obscure movie example perhaps, but if you know what I'm talking about, you know what I mean. It's like, wait for me, wait for me. All right. Exercise number 4, adjective amp. So let's use as many words as we can to describe this image. Let's see, like starry, vibrant. I love the fact that it looks like it's just so mesmerizing, the amount of stars you can see in that Milky Way pattern. I feel like this has got to be fictitious footage, but this could in fact be another planet that isn't the Earth, which is closer to a lot more stars than we are, and so therefore their nighttime sky is much more vibrant, and they can see those patterns of stars and nebula. Black starlit sky contrasted against the vibrant green hills. Really cool image. I like it. I always like scenes where you can put two different things juxtaposition against each other. You know, you can do a juxtaposition between two different types of environments. Because you see that a lot in nature. But what I notice a lot that happens in books is they'll kind of do the Star Wars effect, where they'll be like, this is the snowy area, so everything is snow, or this is the desert area, and everything is desert. But it's fun to mix them and be like, I was just looking at Colorado the other day, pictures of Colorado, where there, you have the sand dunes, and then you have trees, and then you have snowy mountains, all like within the same view. So it's fun to mix those environments and give some contrast. All right. So exercise number 5. Think about your storyline. So we're going to go back to our work. Think about a project you are working on right now. So this is something that is fresh in your mind. Maybe you're working on a draft of it. Maybe you're doing rewrites. I'm not sure where you are, but this current project that you are working on, and think about the story. And think about the story in terms of that journey that your main character is on. So that main character, starts in a certain spot, they go through the story, they end up in a different spot than they started. They have had some sort of growth, some sort of learning, some sort of change. And to get there, they're kind of going through the ringers. So just think about, that process, that arc that is it's often spoken about. All right, and now we're going to ask ourselves a question, and that is, what promises are you making to your reader in the first third of the book, and are you fulfilling those promises? Think about, there are promises that you probably put in that you're deliberately making, like let's say it's a quest sort of story. Oftentimes, quest sort of stories, where you have a hero on some sort of actual physical journey where they're going on a quest to find something like meaning or an object or something. Um, the answer to a question or object or something. If you have a story like that, you probably are starting it with, kind of the everyday for the main character. You're starting it with what a basic day looks like so that you can have that dramatic transformation when they go on their adventure. So that would mean you will have to make some promises to the reader early on that, hey, this is going to get exciting. Just bear with me a little bit. And you might have something like a prologue, although usually that's a little bit frowned upon, but your first chapter might not be in the same viewpoint as your main character because you want to establish a scene that is where that tension point is going to come in, maybe introduce the antagonist, or you might, actually introduce the antagonist and it's a little bit exciting, but then you go back to a normal scene before the main character decides to do something about it. But anyway, you want to make those promises that it's going to get interesting later, if in fact it is going to get interesting later, because otherwise somebody will read and not make it into the interesting part. They'll get to just that opening and they'll be like, oh, I'm not sure if this is ever going to be interesting again. So, what was I saying? So yes, the one thing that you will want to ask yourself in terms of making promises to the reader is that you might accidentally make promises. This gets to what is sometimes called the Chekhov's gun principle. Chekhov was a playwright, and he made a big point of saying if there's a gun piece on the mantle, it needs to be shot by the end of the play, because otherwise the audience is going to wonder why you even put that gun on the mantle in the first place, right? It's like, well, there's a big weapon there right in front of my face. Obviously, it's going to mean something, and then it doesn't. So you have to be careful about the same thing in your book. And to some extent, you should be able to catch them if you just are careful and think about it from a standpoint of, if I didn't really know where the story was going, what might I guess is going to happen? And just make sure that what you're delivering is more interesting than what those guesses are. Or you might want to change what you're, some of the way you introduce things, because if you're not going to make a big deal about it, then don't talk about it. Don't talk about, the mysterious mountain with smoke on the hill and nobody knows why, and then never answer that question. Because people are going to wonder, um, don't talk about, don't have some sort of big dangling mystery that is confusing, and not make that into something that the reader's going to have. On the other hand, from a action standpoint, don't start your book with a huge action sequence if that's not going to happen again, because people are going to assume, oh, this is kind of an action story, it's going to have fun action sequences throughout. If you start with a big old pow action sequence and then the rest of the book is just kind of a slow burn, it might feel like you have lied to the audience. The audience may wonder about that a bit. So this is something we always have to ask ourselves as writers is, first of all, how do we make promises to the reader in order to hook them to read the rest of the book? But then also we have to ask what promises might we have made unintentionally, because that is where you're going to end up with disappointment. They're going to be like, oh, well, I really thought that meant something, or I really thought you were going somewhere with that, or I was really expecting the book to be more like this. And you have to be very careful. That's one thing that happens a lot in genre, even like with book covers and things like that. There is a promise there. When you pick up a science fiction book, you're going to be talking about a plausible yet spectacular reality. So a fantasy is not nearly as plausible as sci-fi, in terms of there's not doesn't have to be a scientific explanation as to how people can use magic in a fantasy, whereas sci-fi, a lot of times readers are looking for something that is more plausible, so therefore there is that promise there as well when it comes to genre. So this is something to keep in mind as you're writing. Think about those promises. What was the promise of the setting? What is the promise of the characters? What's the promise of the genre? What's the promise of that first chapter? First chapter is where a lot of promises tend to happen about the style of the book, what's going to happen in the book, the tone of the book, things like that. And then something that you want to be careful about departing too much from once you get beyond that point or risk upsetting the audience. So, with that in mind, it's time to do a writing sprint. Let's go.
Each and every one of us, each being, we're interconnected. You and me, we're interconnected. interconnected. You and me, we're interconnected.
All right. So I hope that you have enjoyed these exercises this morning and you're off to a flying start writing wise. If you want to break a little bit later on from your writing and have some fun, at noon, I will be doing my Wacky Word Show, which is our game show with word puzzles and rebuses and cryptograms and all kinds of fun things like that. And I will see you there. On Thursday, tomorrow at noon, I will be doing my writer lens on Captain America the Winter Soldier, which is a great movie to use to study the concept of the difference between genre and story structure and how you can kind of play with both things there. It's also a very fun political thriller in many ways, even though it still falls into that superhero genre to some extent as well. So, like I said, how you can balance those two things. So, we'll talk about that. We'll talk about the difference between genre and story structure and how they fit together. So, we'll talk about that. And then I'll have another Write Aerobics Friday at 9 a.m. So, if you had fun this morning, and got some good writing done from these story prompts, feel free to join me again on Friday. So thank you so much for joining me. You have a great day. All right. Bye, everybody. Oh, thank you.